Hello Chess Mood family, GMAvetic here is with you. Welcome to the video course Crush the Sicilian with Knight c3, part 2. If you haven't finished the first part, I highly recommend you to start from there. I recommend you here move bishop b5. Now if black goes here for g6, we take the knight, crushing the pawn structures of black, and after d6, d3, bishop g7, we go f4 immediately, and getting very good version of Rossolimo after knight f3. In the Rossolimo line, after e4, c5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, g6, take, d3, bishop g7, knight c3, knight f6. Here the main ideas for white it was somehow to push f4. In many cases they do with h3, knight h2, f4, or even some cases they play knight g1, f4, knight f3, or knight g1, knight g2, f4. In our case, after g6 we play d3 and next move play f4, so we don't lose tempo anymore. We could just go knight f3 and we get Rossolimo with 2 additional tempo. This is very important note. So after bishop b5, black should play knight d4. The same will happen after e6 or some move like d6. Again, we take this, go d3 and go f4, knight f3. So after bishop b5, knight d4. Here, while there is a big variation after bishop c4 move, instead of going here, we will play here knight f3. This is very trendy and dangerous move for black. Yeah, after knight b5, we give 2 bishop advantage to our opponent. However, as you will see soon, we get advantage in development, we gain the center, and most of the time after move d4 and when black takes d4, we take the pawn with queen. And when there is not knight on b8, black cannot play knight c6, so our queen on d4 is feeling very good and very powerful. This all we will see soon in this video course. I will show you the most important lines and the most important ideas that you need to know for crushing the second move, knight c6. So make your tea or coffee, fasten your seatbelts, we go. We take the knight, crushing the pawn structures of black, and after d6, d3, bishop g7, we go f4 immediately, and getting very good version of Rossolimo after knight f3. Let's start from d5. We take d5, now queen d5 of course is not possible, knight c7 check, and we are queen up. After ed5, if black plays knight f6 and c4, and we are just pawn up. So after ed5, the only way to gain back our d5 pawn is a6 at first. Knight c3 and only now knight f6. Now next move knight d5 is coming. There is interesting way here to play for white is castle, knight d5, knight e4, attacking the c5 pawn, and after e6 to play d4 and try to use our advantage in development after cd4, queen d4. However, after knight f6, here playing d4 immediately is even stronger. The thing here is that if black take here cd4, just queen d4 and we are pawn up. So after d4, black should take knight d5. Then we take c5 pawn, which is free now. Black should take the c3 knight. We take queen d8 at first, king d8 and bc3. This is very interesting position. We are pawn up, but it looks like we have weak pawns here, c2, c3, c5. However, when we go to position deeper, we found out the c5 pawn is not weak, he is strong. After bishop e3, for black it's very hard to gain this. However, the c5 pawn is making big headache for black. Next moves are bishop e3 and rook b1. Rook on b1 is playing very good. Here is half open line b, and there is a b7 weak pawn for black. So rook from b1 is putting big pressure there, and also it's very hard for black to develop their bishop on c8, because all the time whenever bishop f5 or bishop g4, the b7 pawn will hang there. After our next move, bishop e3, rook b1, black should somewhere play this f6 move, because all the time this knight e5 or knight g5 threats will be. However, after b6, we play bishop e3, rook b1, and knight on f3 goes to d2. Knight d2, knight c4, and he goes a knight a5 or knight b6. So, despite of the fact that there is weak pawns, we are still pawn up, and this c5 pawn is not weak absolutely. So this endgame is much better for us. However, if you love to attack after knight f6, you can also go to castle as I showed, and after knight d5, knight e4, attack the c5 pawn, and after e6 go for d4, cd4, queen d4 for more aggressive way, and here again it's very easy to play for white and still advantage is in our side. So because of these two things, knight b5, d5 is not a good move.